right from the get-go, things didn't go well. Our host, who I won't name, did not want us to bring our panniers inside. He kept saying it was because it would scratch the floor. However, when we got inside, we could see that the floor was very, very, very scratched already and had not been polished for a few decades, I would say, which was interesting. He wanted us to leave the panniers down in the cellar. And of course, we did not want to do that. We did not want to do that at all. He didn't want us to bring our rain gear inside, which is fair enough. We hung it up outside. But it was just all felt very dodgy. Hey adventurer, I'm Bridget Hallam from Throw Your Leg Over, and today we're having a look at accommodation options when you're on maybe a weekend away or a longer adventure. I'm looking at soft roof and hard roof accommodation. And by the end of this episode, you will feel confident about choosing the option or the options that really suits your style of adventures. Now, when I'm talking about soft roof, what I mean is camping, and that might be with a tent or it might be a swag. It can be in a campground or free camping. Whereas hard roof accommodation, as you can probably tell, is obviously in a building. That might be a hotel, a motel, maybe a pub, even a cabin in a campground, Airbnb, that kind of thing. It can also include things like farm stays or agriturismo, as it's known in Italy, if you happen to be riding in Italy. When you're thinking about whether you want to use soft roof accommodation or hard roof accommodation, there's a few things to think about. There's pros and cons for each of those. And so if we step through, first of all, soft roof, obviously it's cheaper to stay in a campground or free if you're doing free camping. So you don't need to pay as much for that accommodation. The flip side of that, though, is that you will need to have the gear, and that's an upfront cost. So you will need to have a tent or a swag. You will need to have a mattress, sleeping bag, pillow, all those things. And you will need to have a bag or a way of packing that on your bike. So that might simply be in your pannier, or you may have to purchase a specific bag for that if you don't have one already. An advantage of camping is that if you just rock up to a place, to a campground, it's rare to rock up somewhere where they say, I'm sorry, but we're booked out. If all you're looking for is a patch of grass, it's rare that you're going to be turned away. Another thing that I love about camping is that you're more likely to socialize with other travelers. It's very easy to strike up a conversation with someone who's pitched their tent next to yours. Obviously, you're going to have your motorbike there. Often people are curious and they'll wander over and ask you about your motorbike or where you're from and where you're going. So it's very much easier to socialize when you're camping. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with the camping, which leads me into my next point beautifully. You are at the mercy of the weather. So it's wonderful. Camping's wonderful when the weather's great. When the weather's a bit ugh, it's not so much fun. If it's raining, if it's freezing cold, if it's hailing, oh gosh, if it's snowing, then camping suddenly isn't so much fun. You do also have to share the bathroom facilities, so you are going to have to traipse across the campground to the bathroom, to the showers. And that's not too bad, you know, if that doesn't worry you, that's all good. Not so much fun if you've got to get up in the middle of the night to use the toilet, which I have done. And yeah, that can wear a little thin if you're doing that again and again over a period of time. Not all in one night, hopefully. With camping, especially if you're solo, I would say, Sometimes it doesn't feel as safe. And the reason I'm saying it cannot feel as safe is I'm not actually sure if it is more safe or less safe when you're camping on your own, but sometimes it can feel like it's not as safe. If you're with another person or with a group, I think that that's not so much of an issue. But if you're riding solo and camping, that can be a factor in your decision making. When you're camping, you do obviously have to bring all your gear with you on your bike, and that does mean extra weight. So you do need to be careful about how you pack it on your bike and factor in that the bike is going to be heavier, your bike is going to be a bit harder to maneuver because of that extra weight. And if you're riding around twisties and you're fully loaded, that can just add a little thin level of complexity to your whole riding experience. I've mentioned swags. I don't know many people that carry swags on their bike. I know some people do. Personally, I've never been attracted to the idea because they are bulky and they are heavy, and that is enough for me to say that's not for me. The other things are that there's no room to sit up inside a swag. You know, you're a bit more of a pretzel when you're trying to get dressed. And also, there's very little room, or I would say maybe no room, to put any of your gear inside. And I'm talking there like your helmet, your boots, your valuable stuff. You could probably throw it down at the end of your feet if they're small, but anything that's of any size, you're not going to have room inside your swag. For Alan and I, we have a tent that we carry with us, especially when we're in Europe. And the tent that we've got at the moment, we've had a few tents. The tent that we've got at the moment we really love. It packs down quite small. It's a blackout tent, so when you get inside, it's like it's nighttime. And there is enough room on either side of our mattresses for us to put our, our toiletry bag and our clothing and things like that. We can stick our helmets down near our feet and our riding gear down near our feet. Our boots we put outside the tent, but there's a little alcove. I don't think that's the right word, but there's a little alcove where we can put our boots, so if it rains in the middle of the night, they will be dry. In a swag, you just don't usually have that option. We also carry cooking gear with us, which is another thing that you're going to have to think about if you're camping. Are you going to also cook? And so if you decide that yes, you want to cook or make coffee or whatever the case may be, you will have to have that gear, and that means an upfront cost for cooking gear as well, and that means a little bit of extra weight. It's probably not a lot of weight. Your tent and your mattress and your pillow and all those things, your sleeping bag, they'll probably be heavier than your kitchen, so to speak, in inverted commas, but it is just another thing to consider. If you decide that you don't want to cook, then you will need to think about where you are going to find meals. A lot of times that's no problem. You can jump on the bike and ride to somewhere to eat, a pub or a restaurant or a cafe. Personally, if we've had a big day of riding and we get to our destination and we're setting up the tent and we have showers and we're in our civvy gear, normal clothes, quite often the last thing I feel like, or we feel like doing, is putting all our riding gear back on, getting back on the bike and riding somewhere to eat. But that's our preference. Everyone's a bit different. It's just something to think about when you're planning your weekend away or your adventure. So that's soft roof accommodation. For hard roof accommodation, you're going to have more space. You're going to be in a room. You're going to have a proper bed. You will generally be more comfortable. If the weather is atrocious, it's not going to affect you. That's one less thing that you have to worry about. You will usually have a private bathroom, which is always very nice. And it can feel a bit safer if you're in a room that is lockable, for example, if you're at a motel or a hotel. Another benefit is sometimes breakfast is included. It might be a bed and breakfast. or they might have an optional breakfast that you can select. That's always a handy thing to have because then you don't have to think about where you're going to go and eat. You don't have to traipse around trying to find a cafe that's open. It's just one less thing that you have to think about. And the other advantage of hard roof accommodation, of course, is that you don't have to carry your camping gear. That's just a whole big chunk of gear that you do not have to carry on your bike. You don't have to lug it on. You don't have to lug it off. It's just not even in the equation. The disadvantages, of course, the most obvious one is that hard roof accommodation will almost always be more expensive, sometimes a lot more expensive, and it's not always available. We've had a couple of experiences where we rocked up to a town. The first example I'm thinking of was when we were riding to Tenterfield in New South Wales, beautiful country town, and we thought, oh, we won't have any problems. It was just a normal weekend, not a long weekend or anything. So we rocked up and we thought, oh, well, we'll just get like a cabin at the campground or stay in a pub or something. Well, everything was booked out. And to this day, we don't know why. It just seemed that everyone thought that it would be a great idea to stay overnight in Tenterfield that night. So we were scratching around, we were Googling, we were trying to find a place, any place. Otherwise, we were going to be sleeping in a ditch somewhere. And eventually we did find, I don't know, it must have been the last pub room available in all of Tenterfield. It was old. It had the smoking area, the outdoor smoking area right outside the window. At least the hot water was good, I will say that. But the bed, oh my gosh, I don't know how many decades old it was. The only good thing about it was pretty cheap. But yeah, we didn't get a lot of sleep that night. We had a slightly different experience in Europe. This was back in 2019 when we booked an Airbnb for 2 nights in Grenoble. And it was with a super host. It was a room in his house, highly rated, all the things. We rocked up there about 6 o'clock at night. It had been raining. The weather was terrible. We were a bit miserable. Right from the get-go, things didn't go well. Our host, who I won't name, did not want us to bring our panniers inside. He kept saying it was because it would scratch the floor. However, when we got inside, we could see that the floor was very, very, very scratched already and had not been polished for a few decades, I would say, which was interesting. He wanted us to leave the panniers down in the cellar. And of course, we did not want to do that. We did not want to do that at all. He didn't want us to bring our rain gear inside, which is fair enough. We hung it up outside. But it was just all felt very dodgy. We had to traipse down the road to buy some food from the supermarket. We came back. There was no microwave. There was one pot. I kid you not, like there was one saucepan. It was just weird. And he was just weird. I refused to have a shower. I just said to Alan, I am not having a shower in this house. So I went to bed all sweaty and dirty. We couldn't lock the room. We just jammed stuff up against the door. It was just terrible. It was just, yeah. After that, forevermore with Airbnb, we always select entire homes or entire houses. So we've got the entire place to ourselves. That was a tangent. Back onto the story about Grenoble. Anyway, so obviously we fled that place after the first night. We did not stay for 2 nights. But then all of a sudden we had to find somewhere else to stay. And we thought, well, it can't be that hard. Grenoble's a city. There'll be lots of places here. But no, we could not find a single place to stay. And we all were like, what is going on here? Well, it turns out that the World Cup for women's football was happening in Grenoble at that time. And so, of course, everything was booked out. We eventually managed to find what must have been the last hotel room in Grenoble. It cost us a fortune. It was like €110, I think, way back in 2019. And we were just like, yep, we'll take it. Thankfully, it did have a little kitchenette, so we could just go down to the supermarket a block away and get a few things and cook some dinner. But oh my gosh. So, moral of the story is check ahead if there's going to be any big events to where you're going to go, and maybe book ahead. At least just check it out, just to make sure that there are a few places, hard roof accommodation places, that do have availability. Don't get stuck like we did. The other thing with hard roof accommodation is we have found over the years that it feels a little less personal. It's harder to meet people. You know, you kind of say hello to the person that welcomes you and greets you and shows you to your room or gives you your key or whatever the case may be. And then you're on your own. There's no opportunity to chat with other travelers, other people. So it is a lonelier experience. And if you're traveling with a group, that's totally fine. But if you're solo or like us traveling together and you do like to meet other people, hard roof accommodation does just make that a wee bit more difficult. So they are some things for you to consider when you're figuring out what sort of adventure you want to have and what sort of accommodation you prefer. And it might be a bit of both, like we do. Like we mix it up. We do camping sometimes. We do hard roof accommodation sometimes. If we're in Europe, when we're in the more expensive countries, we'll tend to camp a bit more. When we're in the not so expensive countries, we'll tend to stay in hard roof accommodation more. It's just a matter of figuring out what suits your adventuring style. And your adventuring style is something really important. I did an episode about finding your adventuring style back in episode 4. So feel free to go back and have a listen to that one. But for me, this is really important. It's really important to find the style that really suits you because these are your adventures. These are the memories that you are making. It's really important to do it how you want to do it. I would love to know what you do, what you prefer, what you consider when you are thinking about accommodation. Send me a message. I would love to know. Send me an email. And click that subscribe button so that you know when every episode of the Curves podcast drops. I'd love it if you left a comment or a review or a rating. That would be fantastic. And I will see you next week.